Welcome to Bunny Trails, a whimsical adventure of idioms and other turns of phrase. I'm Dan Pugh.
And I'm Shauna Harrison. Each week, we take an idiom or other turn of phrase and try to tell the story from its entry into the English language to how it's used today. There are a lot of ideas regarding what happens to us after death. It's a question humans have asked for centuries. What happens when it's time to pay the ferryman? The phrase, "it's time to pay the ferryman," draws from ancient Greek mythology, where Charon, the ferryman of Hades, transported souls across the river Styx to the underworld. Traditionally, the dead were buried with a coin, an obol, to pay Charon for passage. Without payment, souls were believed to wander the shores for eternity. Today, paying the ferryman can be used to express a few different things, including death, the original context, consequences in a metaphorical sense, or a turning point, as in a symbolic crossing. Ultimately, it comes down to paying a price to move forward, often with finality. The tone might vary, but the structure is the same. You've taken an action, now it's time to pay, and there's no going back.
I've always kind of put pay the ferryman and pay the piper as the same kind of a phrase, but pay the piper is definitely not, it's just being paid for an action, but there's no concept of like you can't turn around and go back, right? You still have to pay because the performance has ended or the whatever it is has done, and now it's time to pay for the service you've just received, but or the action you've taken. So it's still similar in you've taken an action and now it's time to pay, but pay the ferryman is a note of finality that pay the piper does not have.
Yes, definitely. The key word in the phrase is, in fact, ferryman. And according to Oxford English Dictionary, the term ferryman means, quote, a person who operates or is in charge of a ferry, sometimes with reference to Charon, the ferryman of the underworld in classic mythology, end quote.
So this seems pretty simple from where the phrase comes from then, because even the OED is like, well, yeah, ferryman by itself is oftentimes just referenced with Charon.
Right. In English, the term ferryman started appearing in texts around the mid-1100s to refer to living men who operated ferry services across bodies of water in the overworld.
In the overworld. Yeah, great specification.
Yeah. So this usage continued to be the primary usage for several hundred years, though this mythology still existed, but the actual text use was for ferryman. In the compilation work Manners and Household Expenses of England in the 13th and 15th centuries, the following was noted from around 1464. Quote, paid to the ferryman's wife, end quote. In medieval England, travel often required crossing rivers by boat, and ferrymen or their families operated the crossings. The ferryman's wife might have collected the fare if her husband was unavailable or if she assisted in running the ferry.
Interesting.
Sometimes the husband might be unavailable because he died.
Oh.
And sometimes the payment would still be made to the wife after, or to the family. Anyway, it was natural for these concepts to be linked in certain contexts and for people to use the phrase paying the ferryman to convey deeper meaning.
Right. I wonder if people have to pay St. Peter in the Christian tradition. Like they pay Charon in the Greek.
I don't think it's quite the same kind of transaction in the moment.
Oh yeah, it's not like you can't just like pay your way into it.
Right.
Which is weird because the United States is such like a Christian-facing nation. I mean, like they even say one nation under God in their pledge of allegiance to the country or to the flag, I guess, in a weird way. I don't really get it. But anyway, so they have that whole thing, right? And then but it's a very capitalist society. You think that they would believe in something more like the Greek, pantheon here, where it's like you're going to pay Charon to take you across the river Styx. It's wild to think that a capitalist-facing country that has such deeply Judeo-Christian roots would then also not have an afterlife that matches the way they live their lives, societally speaking. I mean, it's such a weird mix of like the afterlife doesn't seem to match up with the life they live from a societal standpoint. I don't know. It just seems like a bit of a weird thing to me.
Interesting. Yeah. In George Sandys's 1615 work, A Relation of a Journey, we find the following ominous excerpt, quote, Charon, grim ferryman, these streams doth guard, end quote.
Oh,
So, in this context, it's more poetic and literary than it is literal. Sandys is blending that classical myth with his observations. He often compared real world places or experiences to familiar figures from antiquity. So, he may have been describing an actual river or stream he saw in his journey, but he used the myth of Charon as a metaphorical lens to interpret it.
so I wonder if he's saying that this river or whatever is guarded by Charon, does that mean the other side is not for him? Is that what he's saying? He's living, so that other side is the ominous side. We're not going over there because that's where dead people go.
I mean, maybe he
Sort
did,
of.
yeah, he did. He definitely did not explain any further, but just that.
I'm sure
Yeah,
people in 1615 would have known what he meant.
probably. Yeah. But we see a similar usage in the 1724 work Itinerarium Curiosum by William Stuckley. Quote, when we had paid our null to the inexorable ferryman, end quote. Null is an old or dialect word meaning a fare or toll, especially for river crossings.
Huh.
Stuckley is describing a real ferry crossing during his travels, but he sets the moment in that dramatic mythological language. And by invoking inexorable ferryman, he exaggerates the mundane act of paying a boat fare into something that resembles paying Charon for a one-way trip to the underworld. So he's adding this sense of foreboding, but in a kind of tongue-in-cheek sort of way in this text. The Ferryman, a painting by Camille Corot, was originally created in 1865. It was digitized and uploaded to the Fine Art America website on July 24th, 2023. In the painting, a small rowboat glides through a shadowed riverbank steered by a solitary ferryman. 3 passengers sit quietly beneath a large tree, and light breaks through the clouds. The scene feels like a quiet passage between worlds. It's peaceful, yet marked by this sense of finality. I thought this was an interesting piece because it's not depicting a Grim Reaper type of character, but there is still an almost serene sense of separation from the rest of the world. Like it looks very separated from the rest of the living world. In the Wheeling Daily Register, October 28, 1868, out of Wheeling, West Virginia, we find a short advice blurb. Quote, make your chances. While 10 men watch for chances, 1 man makes a chance. While 10 men wait, like Macabre, for something to turn up, 1 man turns up something. So while 10 fails, 1 succeeds and is called a man of luck, the favorite of fortune. Luck makes luck, and fortune favors those most who are utterly indifferent to her smiles. He who waits for a fortune to assist him is like the man who sat down upon the bank of a swiftly running stream, thinking that the water would soon pass and he could pass over without paying the ferryman. End quote. This quote uses the ferryman as a metaphor to show the value of action and self-reliance over passivity. Don't sit around hoping life will change for you. Take action, accept the cost, and cross the river yourself.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting concept to look at from 1868, and I'm sure people have been doing this their whole time because it's definitely been something that, like, one of the huge benefits of America is that we, unlike some countries, we're not stuck in a caste or class system. Like, you can move from one to the next, and that's a huge draw for people, especially those who are coming from countries where a caste or class system is based on their last name, or where they were, what area they're from, or what their parents did. Like, you cannot escape that, right? And so coming to America has represented that for people, and it's still that case. And I think a lot of the people that we see who advance in a class system, moving from lower class or poor, or falling under an unemployment line, or whatever other terms you want to put to it, moving into like a middle class or something like that, is that they are doing a lot of steps they're trying to make their own luck. And I think that there's something to that. that that talks about this piece out of Virginia, West Virginia, I should say, from 1868. So, and that may also be part of what they're thinking there, because it's long been a viewpoint in America that you're going to have to make your own chances. You can't rely on luck. Now, I would say moving from middle class into the rich territory is a little less about that,
There's
and
going
then
to have to be some luck.
then moving to the billionaire, ridiculous, ultra wealthy class isn't even luck anymore. Now it's just taking advantage of other people. Like I don't think you can be in that billionaire class without having taken advantage of a lot of other people along the way. So it's like, yeah. So there's a point at which this kind of advice no longer is relevant. But moving from I didn't have much to trying to move through this is one part of that, along with help from others.
Yeah. I think too, just that kind of basic concept of not waiting for things to happen to you. And if you're seeking that change, then yeah, taking action is going to be preferable most of the time.
Usually.
An article from the Nome Daily Nugget, August 30th, 1911, uses the phrase, quote, "We are not rich enough to afford to neglect the merchant marine problem. Americans pay foreign ship owners about $5 million a week for carrying goods and passengers across the sea. Thus, we have to send more than $250 million abroad every year, just to keep even on the transportation account. It is a big fare to pay the ferryman." End quote. In this article, the phrase "pay the ferryman" is being used metaphorically to describe that steep economic cost Americans were bearing by relying on foreign shipping rather than investing in a stronger U.S. merchant marine. So this was the "pay the ferryman" was somewhat literal, but this was a play on words. They were really using it metaphorically.
Right. Is that Nome Daily Nugget? That's out of Alaska, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I could see a world in which Alaska, which is separated by the contiguous United States. So there is no pathway to get anything from Alaska to the rest of the U.S. without either going through another country or doing it by boat or air. And since I'm pretty sure planes had just been invented in 1911, you weren't doing things by air yet.
Well,
so,
yeah, only barely too.
Right, yeah, dirigibles or something, but no. So it was basically boat or land, but you'd have to go through Canada to get to the U.S. So
and a rough,
rough terrain too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I also found the story of a steep fine paid to a ferryman in several papers from 1915. This particular ferryman was nicknamed the Emperor's Boatman, and you can learn how he earned the moniker in our behind the scenes video, which airs every Friday on Patreon at patreon.com/bunnytrailspod. As we discussed, the phrase "pay the ferryman" originally alluded quite directly to Charon, the mythological figure who ferried souls across the river Styx in exchange for a coin, which was often placed in the mouth of the deceased, which is disturbing but also interesting.
I don't know, where else are you going to put it so that it doesn't fall out or somebody's going to see it and steal from them. You put it on their eyes, but that's worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to stick it up their nose. That seems weird. So where you just lay it on their forehead, somebody's going to steal that thing. And then they'll be cursed, obviously, by some sort of
definitely.
Someone. Mm-hmm. But yeah, anyway. No, so you put it in their mouth. That makes sense.
Exactly. For centuries, references to the ferryman were mostly straightforward, echoing this classical idea of death and spiritual passage, or referring to actual ferrymen in the living world. It was in the early 1900s that the phrase began to carry this deeper sense of mysticism and metaphor beyond the myth, and often symbolizing not just death, but a reckoning, a debt, or this inevitable cost tied to fate or risk. At this point, the phrase held more emotional or superstitious weight, especially among seafarers who saw coins under the mast of ships not just as good luck, but as insurance for the soul's safe passage. These ideas existed and were shared before this, but they really became prominent in the early 1900s, like in the example we just read from 1911. Mentioning the ferryman became often synonymous with the idea of fate or death. We see an example and explanation of this in the Daily Alaska Empire, May 29, 1941, out of Juneau, Alaska. Quote, "Keep souls safe. Seafaring men will tell you that coins under the mainmast not only bring good luck, but keep their souls safe. Commander Beckett of the British Royal Navy, who has made a study of the custom, says it arises from the old Roman habit of placing coins in the mouths of the dead to pay Charon for transportation across the river Styx. Should a ship meet disaster, says the commander, there would be coins there to pay the ferrymen of the Styx for a safe crossing for all aboard. End quote.
I guess as far as superstitions go, that's not a bad one, right?
Right.
It's going to cost you, I don't know how many people were on a crew, but let's pretend like it's 50 coins, for the ship,
Mm-hmm.
All right, fine,
And it
like,
this is
whatever.
essentially like you respect the coins that are there and don't remove them. That was essentially the idea. And sailors would place them there and,
Right. I feel like I may have, by saying 50 coins, whatever, with 50 people, my lack of knowledge about ships and stuff may sound a lot like an American politician being like, what does a gallon of milk cost? $20? Like I have no idea. So I may have been like wildly too low or wildly too high. I have no idea.
I think it just kind of depends on the ship. So
What?
we'll go
There are
with
different
that.
kinds of ships?
Yeah, what?
Oh, no.
Okay. All right, we have several modern uses to cover, and we're going to get to those right after we say thank you to our sponsors.
This episode is sponsored by our amazing patrons on Patreon. And the cool thing about Patreon is it is 100% free to join the Bunny Trails community. We have new things every weekday on the feeds. On Mondays, we have a conversation about what movies, shows, books, podcasts, and whatever else everyone is enjoying. Tuesdays see early access to the week's podcast. Wednesdays have all the links, books, songs, and other content mentioned in the week's episode. Thursday has patrons-only polls. And Fridays are our lightly edited, behind-the-scenes video featuring all the cut content, goofs, and bonus facts you could imagine.
We've got some other pretty cool stuff too, like original digital artwork once a month made by me, and direct access to talk with us. No algorithms getting in the way of what we see or don't see. Plus, you can get awesome name recognition like Pat Rowe does every episode. And our top spot is currently occupied by the amazing Mary Halsig Lopez. You can join the Bunny Trails community for free at Bunny Trails Pod on Patreon.
That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
Betty Arvaniti, Jack Headley, and Mary Sakali starred in the 1977 UK TV series Who Pays the Ferryman? Here's a short description from TV Guide. Quote, Alan Haldane, footloose after selling his boat building business, returns to Crete, where he fought in the Second World War, only to find out that his former girlfriend died but had a daughter. He decides to stay. End quote. So the show brings in some pretty heavy symbolism regarding that like emotional debt and reckoning the main character has to face for past choices, and it suggests that no one escapes the cost of unfinished business or buried guilt. Don't Pay the Ferryman is a song by Chris de Burgh from the 1982 album The Gateway, and here are some of the lyrics. Quote, it was late at night on the open road, speeding like a man on the run, a lifetime spent preparing for the journey. He is closer now and the search is on, reading from a map in the mind. Yes, there's the ragged hill and there's the boat on the river. And when the rain came down, he heard a wild dog howl. There were voices in the night, don't do it. Voices out of sight, don't do it. Too many men have failed before. Whatever you do, don't pay the ferryman. Don't even fix a price. Don't pay the ferryman until he gets you to the other side. End quote.
I am only familiar with one Chris de Burgh song, and it's Lady in Red, which was 1986. So I'm not that it surprises me he had songs that he did before 1986, but that's literally the only Chris de Burgh song I could name.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair. So this is like the song about the ferryman. I mean, like it's just a really like if you search for songs about paying the ferryman, this is
This is the
like
one that pops up, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Well, I'll listen to it like all of you can on the show notes on Patreon or on the website.
The phrase appears in the 2003 Disney movie Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Naturally.
In case you have never seen the movie, I don't know how you did that, but here is a synopsis. Quote, The roguish yet charming Captain Jack Sparrow's idyllic pirate life capsizes after his nemesis, the wily Captain Barbossa, steals his ship, the Black Pearl, and later attacks the town of Port Royal, kidnapping the governor's beautiful daughter Elizabeth. In a gallant attempt to rescue her and recapture the Black Pearl, Elizabeth's childhood friend, Will Turner, joins forces with Jack. What Will doesn't know is that a cursed treasure has doomed Barbossa and his crew to live forever as the undead. End quote.
That feels very spoilery.
Well,
Like, you don't find out that they're undead until later.
or cursed. Listen, if you haven't seen this yet, or been to
Man.
Disney,
I mean, granted, it's over 20 years ago, so I
Yeah.
guess there's that. 22 years old now at the moment,
and there
which is
are
wild
a
that
lot of
that
sequels,
came out
I
so long
think.
ago.
Yeah. In a tense moment when Will Turner is captured by Captain Barbossa's cursed crew, Barbossa explains the dire nature of their situation and the price that they must pay to break their curse. He ominously states, quote, "The last thing you shall see is the mark of the black spot. Now pay the ferryman his due." End quote. Not good, the black spot.
How many ships do you have to be a Commodore?
I think 3 or
Okay.
more.
I was just wondering because, like, if Barbossa had a ship and then he stole Jack's ship, does that make him a Commodore now, or does he need at least 3 ships to do that?
I remember this actually being in one of the movies because Jack was trying to convince Barbossa to like partner up, and he was like even saying, "Then you'll be Commodore," or maybe it was
Sure,
the other
yeah.
guy. I don't know. He used it as like a
Interesting.
bargaining chip kind of thing.
I have very little recollection of most of these movies,
I-
although I have definitely seen the first one. I think I've probably either on a plane or like it playing in the background with the kids,
Mhm.
whatever. I've probably seen them all, but
I've
it's
seen like
obviously
3
been a
or
long time.
4 of them. If I don't know, if
This
there
was
are
20
4.
years ago, so I don't remember.
I have no idea how many of them there are. I think I've seen 3 and maybe 4 if there are 4. Don't Pay the Ferryman #1 Momoko NYCC Virgin Brushed Metal variant is a limited edition comic released in 2020 by Four Leaf Comics. It features exclusive cover art by Peach Momoko. This brushed metal variant was limited to 100 copies and debuted at the New York Comic Con, making it a very rare collector's item. The cover art showcases Momoko's signature ethereal style and depicts a haunting figure associated with the ferryman myth crossing a body of water in a small boat which is made from or at least adorned with bones, primarily skulls. And the artwork is done in a grayscale.
The ferryman is very Grim Reaper-esque, though
Yes.
it's more like the punt, so he's got that long pole basically that they use that a lot of people associate with gondolas of like Venice, where they got this long pole that's reaching down to the bottom of the canal, and that's what's pulling them instead of a scythe. But yeah, it's very, and the hand is almost skeletal in nature, is to be so thin and alabaster.
Yeah, it's creepy. It's
Mm.
cool.
Yeah. So, well, yes, if you are into that sort of thing, and I know that you are.
All right, so here's a little bit about the comic itself. Quote, "Welcome to a new psycho thriller that leaves you asking yourself, do you dare tempt fate? For the residents of Castle Hill, Rhode Island, life moves at a steady pace. This small coastal fishing town is home to some of the best Atlantic salmon in the Northeast. For the town of Castle Hill, a myth stays buried among the townspeople, a myth that, over time, has driven men mad. Tempting fate is a risky choice, one that could result in consequences affecting a person's future. To tempt fate, a person must take the hunt, solve the riddle, and grab the coins. But, as the town people beg, don't pay the ferryman." End quote. It's an interesting setup for a comic, actually. Ferryman is a 2022 song by Schaefer James and Will Wood.
Oh my God, my children love Will Wood so much.
This is a really catchy song. I listened to it several times in a row just because it was fun to listen to, and yeah, really catchy. Here are the lyrics to the chorus. Quote, "Oh, your time is coming fast, row, row down the stream, and the ferryman only deals in cash. This is not a dream. Oh, your time is coming fast, row, row down the stream. The ferryman only deals in cash, end quote. The verses to this song describe ways in which some people meet the ferryman.
Oh.
It's fun, but a little dark.
Dark is your style, though.
Yeah, so we're going to read more of those in the behind the scenes.
Oh, so we have two features in the behind the scenes this week. Wow, double bonus for patrons. Cool.
Yeah. So Friday on Patreon, patreon.com/bunnytrailspod. To Pay the Ferryman is a 2025 novel by P.R. Black. Here's the synopsis from the publisher. Quote, a cold case in the city of the dead. D.I. Lamond is a devoted family man, a good detective. When the body of a young woman involved in the worlds of art and adult streaming is found in the River Clyde, Lamond believes there may be echoes of a cold case from the start of his unsolved death on a rural Scottish estate in the 1990s. Then, a Swedish feminist activist, who also has a connection to Lamond's past, arrives in the city to protest against the failure of the police to find the killer. The victims all seem to be drawn from the world of art and business. Is the cold case the answer, or just part of the key? And could the killer be about to get dangerously close to Lamond and his family? End quote.
Okay, wait. This is a cold case, but it's in the city of the dead. So are all these people dead? And if they're all dead already, like Lamond had an unsolved death, right, in the 90s. But like this then he's a cop in the afterlife, but you could be killed from that afterlife, apparently. This raises more questions than it does answers, actually.
It's really interesting.
If there is humor in this, like if there's like witty, sarcastic style of humor, then I will definitely read this book. But I will need to look a little bit more into it, because if it's just like, a police procedural drama, I'm fine. I don't mind those, but I want them to have humor in them.
Fair. So this is like, it's like a series, but it's the first book.
Okay.
So don't know the answer to that yet. I enjoy humor in my stories too, like regardless of the style, so it's fun. There's a necklace for sale on Etsy, the Ferryman Antique Coin Necklace by Cloven, and here's that description. Quote, from a 16.5-inch long antiqued brass cable chain swings a trio of antique coins, one of Russian descent from 1735, another from France, 1917, and finally a Victoria farthing from 1877. Wear the necklace with either the design facing out or the date facing out. End quote. And I'm kind of curious, like, what's the difference? What if you have the design facing out? What does that mean? Does that mean something different than if the date's facing out?
I don't know. I've never heard of that, but just because there's most things in life I haven't heard of. So like, that's me not having heard of it means nothing.
I did think this was neat to have coins from different areas and everything. And there are different colors of metals that they're made from. So to me, Pay the Ferryman is a very powerful phrase that speaks to the idea of reckoning, of debts coming due, whether literal or moral. I like how it carries a sense of inevitable justice, like a moment when actions meet consequences. It's dramatic, a little dark, and it perfectly captures the weight of facing what's owed. But it can also be used lightly, like when it's finally time to deal with something you've been putting off, or to jokingly acknowledge a small but unavoidable cost. That's about all we have for today. If you have any thoughts on the show or pop culture references we should have included, reach out to us on Patreon, patreon.com/bunnytrailspod, or comment on our website, bunnytrailspod.com.
All right, it is poll time. Recently, we asked our patrons, do you finish your book in 1 or 2 settings, or do you take your time? The winner, receiving about 2/3 of the votes, was Take My Time. I take pleasure in a good, slow read. JGP says, quote, it really depends on the book. There have definitely been times I intended to take my time, but then whoops, what do you know, it's 2 a.m. and the book is finished, end quote.
I have that same issue, but I'm really a solid combination of both on this one. And like JGP, it really depends on the book.
Yeah, not so for me. I'm part of the 1/3 here. I am going to finish it in just a few settings usually. And a lot of it is because it's mostly the problem between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. is about 10 minutes apart when I'm reading. So I will tell myself I'm just going to finish this chapter, and then suddenly it's 3 a.m. and I finish the whole book. And I don't intend to read them all in one setting, but that is what usually happens. So while I would love to be the person that just sits and savors a good book over, several days, over several readings, sit out in the backyard, blah, 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 or lay in the hammock or something. I don't have a hammock, but if I did, so like something like that. But no, I will start a book and I will rapidly finish a book. The only, if I'm not going to finish the book in a few settings, it's probably not a book that's holding my interest. And then I may not even finish it at all. Actually, I may just be like, nope, my to be read list is too long to read a book I'm not enjoying. So yeah, either I'm going to read it all very fast or I'm not going to finish it. I'll just be like, never mind. As a reminder, our silly polls mean absolutely nothing and are not scientifically valid. And patrons of all levels, including our free tiers, can take part. Head over to patreon.com/bunnytrailspod to take this week's poll. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, remember, words belong to their users.